ಸಂಸಾರದವನಲಲಿಡಲೋಕ ತ್ರಾಣಾಯ ಕಾರುಣ್ಯ ಗಣ ಗಣ ತ್ವಂ ಪ್ರಾಪ್ತಸ್ಯ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಗುಣರ್ನವಸ್ಯ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ महाप्रभो कीर्तन नित्य गीता वादित्रमाद्यान् मनसोरसेना रोमांचकांपा सुतरंगा बाजो वंदे गुरु श्रीचरणरविंदम श्री विग्रहाराधन नित्यानाना शृंगारतान्मान्दिरमजनादो ग्रहाराधन नित्यानाना शृंगारतान्मान्दिरमजनादो युक्तस्य भक्तां चयनिञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् चतुर्विधा श्री भगवत प्रसादा स्वादान तृप्तान् हरिभक्त संगान् कृतैव तृप्तिं भजता सदैव वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपारा माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्ना श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपारा माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्ना प्रतीक्षणा स्वादनलोलुपास्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् निकुञ्जयो नो रतिकेलिसीद्याय यायालिभियुक्तिरपेक्षणीया तत्रादिदाक्षात् अतिवल्लभास्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् साक्षादरित्वेन्द समस्तशास्त्रे उक्तास्तथा भाव्यत एव साद्भिः किन्तु प्रभु नभोजा प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादान्न गति कुतोऽपि यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादान्न गति कुतोऽपि ध्यायन् सुवास्यं तस्य यशस्श्रीसन्ध्यं वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दं वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपेस्ताय भूतले श्रीमति भक्तिवेदान्ता स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसदि गौरा भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसदि गौरा भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसदि गौरा भक्तवृंद Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nila Madhava Radha Nila Madhava Radhe, Jayo Jagannatha Jayo Baladeva Jayo Subhadrama Jayo Sudarshana, Jayo Sita Ram Sita Ram Sita Ram Lakshmana Hanuman, Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha, Jayo Gauranitai Jayo Gauranitai Jayo Gauranitai Jayo Gauranitai, Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Guru Deva Jayo Guru Deva Jayo Guru Deva Jayo Guru Deva, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Namaste Narasimhaya Praladadayine Hiranyakashipurvakshaha Shilatan khana khalaye Hito narsema parato narsema Yato yato yami tato narsema Bahir narsema hridaye narsema Narasimhamadim sharanam prapade Tav kar kamalvare nakham adbhuta shringam dalita hiranyakashipu tanu bringam kesavadirta narhari rupa jai jagadish hare Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare केशवधीरता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो भक्त प्रहलाद जयो भक्त प्रहलाद जयो प्रहलाद महाराज। जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद। जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव। भक्ति भग्न विनाशन कृष्ण भगवान की जय, प्रहलाद महाराज की जय।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः। नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः। राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो एई अभिलाषी। राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो एई अभिलाषी। जेतो मारा शरण लो तारा वंश पूरन हो। कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी। मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास। नयने हरि वो सदा जुगल रूपरासी। जुगल रूपरासी। निज दासी दीना कृष्ण दासे कोई ये न मोरा होए श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा ये न भासी श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा ये न भासी यानि कानि च पापानि भ्रमाहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे राम राम हरे हरे जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय।
bestow mercy upon him and make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire to also grant me a residence in the precious groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I shall always behold the beautiful paths of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me follow Karo Danso's virtue. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays. May I always swim in the love of Shri Radha and Govinda. Srimati Tulsi Maharani ki jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting holy names that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives for the propagation of holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the name of the demigods and allow Shiva or Brahma to be equal to independent name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature for students of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activity and strength of chanting holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritualistic activities, offering the Vedas of fruit activities, karma, kanda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glory of holy name. 10. To not complete faith in the chanting holy names, and to maintain material attachments in understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims the Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to achieve desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us have most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just as thy trees who can fulfill to everyone. They are full of compassion.
श्री शिष्टाष्टकम प्रेयर्स की जय। चेतो दर्पणमार्जनं भवमहादावाग्निर्वापनं श्रेयाकैरवचन्द्रिका वितरणं विद्यावधूजीवनम् आनन्दं बुद्धिवर्धनं प्रतिपदं पूर्णामृतास्वादनं सर्वात्मा स्नापनं परं विजयते श्रीकृष्णसङ्कीर्तनं नाम्नामकारी बहुधा निजसर्वशक्ति तत्रार्पिता नियमिता स्मरणेन काला एतादृशी तव कृपा भगवान् ममापि दुर्दैवमीदृशम् इह जनीनानुरागः त्रिनादपि सुनीचेन तरोरपि सहिष्णुना अमानीना मनादेन कीर्तनीया सदा हरि न धनं न जनं न सुन्दरीं कवितां वा जगदीशकामये मम जन्मानि जन्ममीश्वरे भवताद्भक्तिरहैतुकी त्वयि ऐनन्दतनुजा किङ्करं पतितां मां विषमे भवाम्बुधौ प्रिया तव पादपङ्कजा स्थितधूलिसदृशं विचिन्तय नयनं गलदश्रुधारया वदनं गिद्गद्या गिरा पुलकैर्निचितं वपु कदा तव नाम ग्रहणे भविष्यति युगायितं निमशेन चक्षुषा प्रवर्षायितं शून्यायितं जगत्सर्वं गोविन्दविराहेण मे अश्लीयवापादरतं पिनस्तु माम् आदर्शनं मर्महतं करोतु वा यथा तथा वा विदधातु लम्पतो मत्प्राणनाथास्तु स एव नापरः हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Glory
to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtana movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai. Shri Guru Pranama Prayers Ki Jai. Om Aganyati Mirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurunmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschate Satarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namini Shabanavi Devi Dayataya Krupabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayini Prabhave Namaha Madhurojvala Premadhya Sri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virupa Siddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gaura Kishauraya Sakshata Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padam Bhujayate Namaha Namo Bhakta Vinodaya Satchidanandanamine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Vrayate Gauravir Bhumi Swam Nirdesa Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Shri Jagannadaya Te Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Krupa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaure Tushe Namaha Panchatattvam Krishnam Bhakta Swarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pangorma Mandamate Gati Matsarva Swapadam Bhujor Radha Mohano Divyad Vinduranya Kalpadrumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prasthali Bihi Sevimana Swarami Shiman Rasara Saram Bivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswane Gopir Gopinata Striestuna Tapta Kanchana Kurandi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Stute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhe Govinda Sarvakarana Karana Chintamani Prakara Satmasukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vrite Susravira Vipalyantam Lakshmi Sahasrasat Sambrama Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kvanantam Adavinda Dalayataksam Varhavatam Samasitam Sundarangam Kandarpa Kotikamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandrakala Sadvanamaya Vamsi Radnam Gadam Pranayakela Kalavilasam Shamam Chibangala Litanyata Prakasam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Pantika Yanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vikrasya Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam
Satyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsara Sampragam Yova Yoratapi Manasomani Pungamana Sobhyasti Yad Prapadisimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sura Chayitam Jagadanta Kotim Yas Chakti Rasti Jagadanta Chaya Yadanta Antantarasta Paramanu Chayantastaram Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Baba Bhavita Dio Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayanabusa Suptarya Meva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmayara Sadpratibhavita Abhista Virya Eva Nijarupa Daya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vidochanena Santaksa Deva Hidaya Suviloka Antiyam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. Go ahead.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desire in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with a figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Shyamasundara is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of the transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universe as both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha, yet he is the person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and at the same time. Such is the primal Lord whom I adore. I adore the same Govinda, the primal Lord, in whose praise men who are imbued with devotion sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveyances, and ornaments. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm Goloka, with Radha resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities, in the company of her confident Sakhis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shyamasundara, Krishna himself with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrisimha, Vamana, etc., as his subjective portions.
Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauruvani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatyate Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Bol. Well, we'll wait a little bit before we go over our homework that I gave yesterday. So we'll continue in Canto 3, Chapter 9, text number 15. Yasyavatara gunakarma vidambanani. Go ahead. Namani ye suvigame vivasagrinanti. Te naika janma samalam sahasaiva hitva. Samyant apavritam ritam tamajam prapadye. Yasya, whose, avatara, incarnations, guna, transcendental qualities, karma, activities, vidambanani, all mysterious, namani, transcendental names, ye, those, asuvigame, while quitting this life, vivasa, automatically, grinanti, invoke, te, they, anaika, many, janma, births, samalam, accumulated sins, sahasa, immediately, eva, certainly, hitva, giving up, samyanti, obtain, apavrita, open, amritam, immortality, tam, him, ajam, the unborn, prapadye, I take shelter. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Let me take shelter of the lotus feet of Him whose incarnations, qualities, and activities are mysterious imitations of worldly affairs. One who invokes His transcendental names, even unconsciously, at the time he quits this life, is certainly washed immediately of the sins of many, many births and attains Him without fail. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The activities of the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are a kind of imitation of the activities going on in the material world. He is just like an actor on a stage, and an actor imitates the activities of a king on stage, although actually he is not the king. Similarly, when the Lord incarnates, He imitates parts with which He has nothing to do. In Bhagavad Gita 4:14, it is said that the Lord has nothing to do with the activities in which He is supposedly engaged. Namam karamani limpanti name karma phale spriha. The Lord is omnipotent. Simply by His will He can perform anything and everything. When the Lord appeared as Lord Krishna, He played the part of the son of Yasoda and Nanda. And He lifted the Govardhana hill, although lifting a hill is not His concern. He can lift millions of Govardhana hills by a simple desire. He does not need to lift it with His hand. But He imitates the ordinary living entity by this lifting. And at the same time, He exhibits His supernatural power. Thus His name is chanted as the lifter of Govardhana hill, or Shri Govardhana Dari. Therefore, His acts in His incarnations and His partiality to devotees are all imitations only, just like the stage makeup of an expert dramatical player. He acts in that capacity, however. His acts in that capacity, however, are all omnipotent, and the remembrance of such activities of the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is as powerful as the Lord Himself. Ajamila remembered the holy name of the Lord, Narayana, by merely calling the name of His son Narayana, and that gave him a complete opportunity to achieve the highest perfection of life. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Let me take shelter of the lotus feet of him whose incarnations, qualities, and activities are mysterious imitations of the worldly affairs. One who invokes his transcendental names, even unconsciously at the time he quits this life, is certainly washed immediately of the sins of many, many births and attains him without fail. Well, here's a solution to all problems of life. If we chant Hare Krishna during this lifetime, then it'll be easy for us to remember to chant Hare Krishna at the moment of death. If we do that, we go back to Godhead. Even if you have difficulty doing that, sometimes people do because they might be very, very sick at the moment of death. So this is explained in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Where it says that there are two paths by which one can leave the body. They are never, so according to the Vedic, this is 8th chapter, verse number 26. According to the Vedic opinion, there are two ways of passing from this world, one in light and one in darkness. When one passes in light, he does not come back, but when one passes in darkness, he returns. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, the same description of departure and return is quoted by Acharya Baladev Vidyabhusana from the Chandogya Upanishad 5.10.3-5. Those who are fruitive laborers and philosophical speculators from time immemorial are constantly going and coming. Actually, they do not attain ultimate salvation, for they do not surrender to Krishna. Then the next verse, text 27. Although the devotees know these two paths, O Arjuna, they are not bewildered. Therefore, be always fixed in devotion. Okay, so now here's the explanation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Krishna is here advising Arjuna that he should not be disturbed by the different paths of the soul, the different paths the soul can take when leaving the material world. A devotee of the Supreme Lord should not worry whether he will depart by arrangement or by accident. The devotee should be firmly established in Krishna consciousness and chant Hare Krishna. He should know that concern over either of these two paths is troublesome. The best way to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness is to be always dovetailed in his service. And this will make one's path to the spiritual kingdom safe, certain, and direct. The word yoga yukta is especially significant in this verse. One who is firm in yoga is constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness in all his activities. Shri Rupa Goswami advises, Anasakta Shivishayan Yatarham Upayan Jata. One should be unattached to material affairs and do everything in Krishna consciousness. By this system, which is called Yukta Vairagya, one attains perfection. Therefore, the devotee is not disturbed by these descriptions, because he knows that his passage to the Supreme Abode is guaranteed by devotional service. Now, this is a lot of good news here, and if we take it seriously, we see that the solution to all the problems is to chant Hare Krishna, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The best way to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness is to be always dovetailed in his service. And this will make one's path to the spiritual kingdom safe, certain, and direct. Okay, so there it is. One who is firm in yoga is constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness in all his activities. So that's the main point of becoming a devotee, to be always engaged in devotional service in good association of people who are actually following the principles of devotional service, and to be regularly hearing and chanting Shravanam Kirtana Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Sakyam Dasyam Atma Nivedanam. These are the 9 types of devotional service. You can be engaged in either 1 or 2 or 3 or all 9. You will attain perfection in this lifetime. It's nice to be engaged in all of them, right? So, if we become anxious because we think, oh my God, I don't know how to, I don't know how I'm going to be able to leave my body just at the right time, you don't have to worry about that. Because if you chant Hare Krishna, you're going back to Godhead. Otherwise, it becomes very complicated. As you can see, there's 2 ways of leaving the body, one in light and one in darkness. So the Makara Sankranti is the time when the sun goes into the northern hemisphere. So there's more light, like right now. So this is the light period. These are auspicious times to leave the body. And then when we come to the beginning of fall and winter, it's the dark period when there's more people die at that point. And then it's less auspicious to leave the body. But that's not relative to the devotee, because the devotee is always doing auspicious things by engaging in devotional service and chanting the holy names, distributing prasadam and worshiping the deity, etc. So this is why becoming Krishna conscious is so important. Otherwise, we get involved in so many technicalities, we'll just get confused. And it's very easy to make mistakes with such complicated things. Okay, so yesterday we had some homework, and that was to read the 15th mantra of the Ishopanishad, not the whole thing. It started from the point, since it is said that the Lord Krishna never leaves Vrindavan Dhama, one may ask how he manages the affairs of the creation. Okay, who wants to read?
Read from where you start, right?
Since it is said.
Okay. Since it is said that Lord Krishna never leaves Vrindavan Dhama, one may ask how he manages the affairs of the creation. This is answered in the Bhagavad Gita, 13 chapter 14 to 18 verses. The Lord pervades the entire material creation by his plenary part known as the Paramatma or Super Soul. Although the Lord personally has nothing to do with the material creation, maintenance and destruction, he causes all these things to be done by his plenary expansion, the Paramatma. Every living entity is known as Atma, soul, and the principal Atma who controls them all is Paramatma, the Super Soul. The system of God realization is a great science. The materialistic Sankhya yogis can only analyze and meditate on the 24 factors of the material creation, for they have very little information of the Purusha, the Lord. And the impersonal transcendentalists are simply bewildered by the glaring effulgence of the Brahma Jyoti. If one wants to see the absolute truth in full, one has to penetrate beyond the 24 material elements and the glaring effulgence as well. Sri Ishopanishad points toward this direction, praying for the removal of the Hiranyamaya Patra, the dazzling covering of the Lord. Unless this covering is removed, so one can perceive the real face of the personality of Godhead, factual realization of the absolute truth can never be achieved. The Paramatma feature of the personality of Godhead is one of the 3 plenary expansions, collectively known as the Purusha Avataras. One of these Vishnu Tattvas, who is within the universe, is known as Kshirodaka Sai Vishnu. He is the Vishnu among the three principal deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and he is the all-pervading Paramatma in each and every individual living entity. The second Vishnu Tattva within the universe is Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu living entities. Beyond these two is Karanodaka Sai Vishnu, who lies in the causal ocean. He is the creator of all universes. The yoga system teaches the serious student to meet the Vishnu Tattvas after going beyond the 24 elements of the cosmic creation. The culture of empiric philosophy helps one realize the impersonal Brahmajyoti, which is the glaring effulgence of the transcendental body of Lord Sri Krishna. That the Brahmajyoti is Krishna's effulgence is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 14th chapter 27th verse, as well as the Brahma Samhita 5.40.
Yasya Prabha Prabhuto
Jagadanda Koti Koti Svasesha Vibhuti Pinda Tad Brahma Nishkalamanantam Ashesha Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. In the millions and millions of universes, there are innumerable planets, and each and every one of them is different from the others by its cosmic constitution. All of these planets are situated in a corner of the Brahmajyoti. This Brahmajyoti is but the personal rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, whom I worship. This mantra from the Brahma Samhita is spoken from the platform of factual realization of the absolute truth. And the Shruti mantra of the Sri Isopanishad under discussion confirms this mantra as a process of realization. The Isopanishad mantra is a simple prayer to the Lord to remove the Brahmajyoti so that one can see his real face. This Brahmajyoti effulgence is described in detail in several mantras of the Mundaka Upanishad.
Go ahead, just read English.
In the spiritual realm, beyond the material covering is the unlimited Brahman effulgence, which is free from material contamination. That effulgent white light is understood by transcendentalists to be light of all lights. In that realm, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity for illumination. Indeed, whatever illumination appears in the material world is only a reflection of that supreme illumination. That Brahman is in front and in back, in the north, south, east, and west, and also overhead and below. In other words, that supreme Brahman effulgence spreads throughout both the material and spiritual skies. Perfect knowledge means knowing Krishna as the root of this Brahman effulgence. This knowledge can be gained from such scriptures as Srimad Bhagavatam, which perfectly elaborates the science of Krishna. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the author Srila Vyasadeva has established that one will describe the supreme truth as Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan according to one's realization of him. Srila Vyasadeva never states that the supreme truth is a jiva, an ordinary living entity. The living entity should never be considered the all-powerful supreme truth. If he were the supreme, he would not need to pray to the Lord to remove his dazzling cover so that the living entity could see his real face. The conclusion is that one who has no knowledge of the potencies of the supreme truth will realize the impersonal Brahman. Similarly, when one realizes the material potencies of the Lord but has little or no information of the spiritual potencies, he attains Paramatma realization. Thus, both Brahman and Paramatma realization of the absolute truth are partial realizations. However, one realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna in full potency after the removal of the Hiranyamaya Patra. One realizes Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Lord Sri Krishna, who is known as Vasudeva, is everything: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. He is Bhagavan, the root, and Brahman and Paramatma are his branches. In the Bhagavad Gita, 6 chapter 46 to 47 verse, there is a comparative analysis of the three types of transcendentalists: the worshippers of the impersonal Brahman, Jnanis; the worshippers of the Paramatma feature, Yogis; and the devotees of the Lord Sri Krishna, Bhaktas.
You notice he doesn't talk about the karmis.
Yeah.
The karma yogis. Go ahead.
It is stated there that the Jnanis, those who have cultivated Vedic knowledge, are better than ordinary fruitive workers, that the yogis are still greater than the Jnanis, and that among all yogis, those who constantly serve the Lord with all their energies are the topmost. In summary, a philosopher is better than a laboring man, a mystic is superior to a philosopher, and all of the mystic yogis, he who follows Bhakti Yoga, constantly engaging in the service of the Lord, is the highest. See, Ishopanishad directs us towards this perfection.
Hari Bol.
Right.
So this is very important purport. It helps us understand more clearly the different levels of realization of the Lord. It's important that we understand this, because otherwise, like most people in the world, we'll be misled. We might have a false concept that, we know everything. But actually, one is ignorant of the actual truth. So therefore, in the what's very, let's say, significant is the conclusion is that one who has no knowledge of the potencies of the Supreme Truth will realize the impersonal Brahman. No knowledge of the potencies of the Supreme Truth. Okay. Similarly, when one realizes the material potencies of the Lord, but has little or no information of the spiritual potencies, he attains Paramatma realization. So, number one, the conclusion is that one who has no knowledge of the potencies of the Supreme Lord, Supreme Truth, will realize the impersonal Brahman. So that's the Mayavadis. They have no knowledge of the potencies of the Supreme Truth. In fact, they deny the existence of the Supreme Absolute Truth, Personality of Godhead, Krishna. They think he's an ordinary person when he appears in the material world. So they might be able to realize the impersonal Brahman. Then, when one realizes the material potencies of the Lord, but has little or no information of the spiritual potencies, he attains Paramatma realization. So these are people like the followers of Patanjali, or the Sankhya yogis, more specifically, Sankhya yogis. They study the 24 elements in the material world. So, but they have very little knowledge about the spiritual potencies. So they may attain Paramatma realization. Thus, both Brahman and Paramatma realization, Absolute Truth, are partial realizations. However, when one realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, in full potency, after the removal of the Hiranmaya Patra, that dazzling effulgence that blinds the eyes, right? And that's what this prayer is. Hiranmayana patrena satyasya pitambakam tatvam pusamapavrinu satyadharmaya dristaye. O my Lord, this is the mantra 15. Sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. So this is what we pray. We want the Lord to take away that curtain of light that's stopping us from seeing his beautiful form and face. In fact, the next verse, Pusan ekase yamasuya prajapatya vyuharasmin samaha tejaha yatte rupam kalyan mam tate pasyami yo savaso purushaha sohamasmi. O my Lord, O primeval philosopher, maintainer of the universe, O regulating principle, destination of the pure devotees, well-wisher of the progenitors of mankind, please remove the effulgence of your transcendental rays so that I can see your form of bliss. You are the eternal Supreme Personality of Godhead, like unto the sun, as am I. So here it is. This is 2 verses beseeching the Lord, or begging Lord, please take away this yogamaya, please take away this effulgence of the Brahma Jyoti that's stopping me from seeing your beautiful face. This is the desire of the devotee. He's not interested so much in the Brahman effulgence. He is interested in Paramatma, but knowing that it's still partial realization of the Lord, but he's very interested in the Lord himself, or Krishna. And he focuses all his attention on being able to understand as much as is humanly possible the material and spiritual potencies of the Lord, and therefore he prays that the Lord removes the curtain of light, the Brahma Jyoti, so that he can see his smiling face. This is real philosophy. This is real knowledge. And therefore Prabhupada says here, perfect knowledge means knowing Krishna as the root of this Brahman effulgence. Well, obviously, the Mayavadis don't know this. And the Gyanis are not absolutely sure either. They have more knowledge than the Mayavadis, but they're not fixed up firmly. So perfect knowledge means knowing Krishna as the root of this Brahman effulgence. This knowledge can be gained from such scriptures as Srimad Bhagavatam, which perfectly elaborates the science of Krishna. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the author, Srila Vyasadeva, has established that one will describe the Supreme Truth as Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. Vedanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajkaram admayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. It's a verse from the first canto, second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, which explains that there's three levels of understanding the Lord: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Srila Vyasadeva never states that the Supreme Truth is a jiva, an ordinary living entity. Yeah, but there's plenty of nonsense people in India that say jiva becomes Paramatma. So we see how there's so much confusion. The living entity should never be considered the all-powerful Supreme Truth. Again, you have the man gods in India, and people worship them as if they are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's complete nonsense. If he were the Supreme, he would not need to pray to the Lord to remove his dazzling cover so that the living entity could see his real face. The conclusion is that one who has no knowledge of the potencies of the Supreme Truth will realize the impersonal Brahman. Similarly, when one realizes the material potencies of the Lord but has little or no information of the spiritual potencies, he attains Paramatma realization. Thus both Brahman and Paramatma realization, absolute truth, are partial realizations. However, when one realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, in full potency after the removal of the Hiranyamaya Patra, you have to pray for that, one realizes Vasudeva Saramiti. So therefore it says, Bahanam Janmanam Ante Gyanavamam Prapajante Vasudeva Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabhaha. So Vasudeva, or Krishna, you are everything for me. That's the mature devotee realizes that. Lord Shri Krishna is known as Vasudeva, is everything. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. He is Bhagavan, the root, and Brahman and Paramatma are his branches. So this is real knowledge. This is what we're trying to learn. This is something that we have to be able to teach our kids also. Then they will not be fooled by all the nonsense speculations that are out there in the material world. Otherwise, there's a whole, let's say, avalanche of nonsense, especially in India. And therefore, it's very difficult for people to understand who Krishna is and to be successful in their attempts to go back to Godhead. Misinformation or false speculative theories keep people in the material world and obstructs them from any possibility of making spiritual advancement. That's how dangerous they are. So we should not support them in any way. And we should not support people who profess such nonsense theories and speculations. Okay, well, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
So I'm referring to this paragraph, second last paragraph in the 15th verse, Upanishad. We read many times. The conclusion is that one who has no knowledge of the potency of the supreme truth will realize the impersonal Brahman.
Yeah.
That means the lowest level of understanding, right? Like of the Bhagavan, the whole Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So it's a progressive way of understanding Bhagavan, correct? The next,
what?
is it a progressive way of understanding the absolute truth? First is Brahman, then Paramatma, and then the Bhagavan.
Well, you can go directly to Bhagavan.
Yeah,
because Bhagavan realization includes
all three.
the Brahman and Paramatma. Or you can go step by step.
Yes,
What Prabhupada is teaching us, what Ishopanishad is teaching us, is to go directly to Bhagavan. And then and right away you'll have an understanding of Brahman and Paramatma.
Yeah, so my confusion is like in the next verse, Prabhupada says it's a progressive way of realization in the purports. But here, the second line, which is similarly when one realizes the material potencies of the Lord, but has little or no information on the spiritual potencies, he attains Paramatma realization. So I was thinking, when he comes to Paramatma, he would have an understanding of spiritual potencies of the Lord as well. But here Prabhupada says little or no, just the material potencies. So
yeah. That's why it's good to read Bhagavad Gita and go directly to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then you'll understand properly Paramatma and Brahmajyoti. Otherwise, you could go for years studying Brahmajyoti and Paramatma and might never even reach Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya is bringing you directly. He's saying, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He's giving you Krishna right away. So if you know Krishna, you know everything else, because everything is coming from him.
So Maharaj, that's probably why the Mayavadis, even though they may also read Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita stories, or at least Bhagavatam stories, sometimes they narrate the stories, but they don't see that this is actually happening in the spiritual world eternally. So they only interpret.
Mayavadis don't believe the spiritual world exists.
Correct. Yeah, because it says here, of course, even Dhyanis, because they have no or little information about the spiritual potencies. So they only see the Lord's manifestation in the material world, and then they may describe those pastimes as a matter of fact. But they see that as...
Well, they can understand the difference between the body and the soul, and they may understand also, and they can understand the difference between the soul and the super soul. But to understand Krishna as the Supreme Personality Godhead, they can have many misconceptions. So, therefore, it's incomplete knowledge. What's happening is Lord Chaitanya is bringing the devotee right away to complete knowledge. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. He is the source of all incarnations. He is the source of everything. Janmadashayata. Janmadashayata niviyad itaratashartesu vidyaswarat tene brahma hirdaya adhikavaye muyanti atsuraya. Tejo varimalam vinimayo, and so forth. That is the first mantra of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That has everything in it. It's giving you direct knowledge that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One second. It says, Tene Brahma Hirdaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Atsurya Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Tisargo Misha Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent, in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. There you go. That's the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's taking you directly to Krishna. This is Lord Chaitanya's movement. Why waste time trying to understand Brahman, then Paramatma, and then Bhagavan? You understand Bhagavan, you understand Paramatma and Brahman. Right? Dharma projita kaitravocha nirmatsanam satam vedyam vastavam atravastu shivadam tapo trayon mulanam shrimad bhagavatam mahamuni krite kimva purer ishwaraha damnasvena sada nirasta sadyo hridya avarudyate cha kriti bihi sususupistakshana. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion. For the welfare of all, such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva, in his maturity is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. We were reciting this before every day. I think we're going to, starting tomorrow, recite this also. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam Sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam Pipata bhagavatam rasam alayam Muhur ahoraska bhuvibhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So these are the first three verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, but it summarizes everything in the whole Bhagavatam. That's how powerful these verses are. And the best thing is go directly to Krishna. That includes also Paramatma and Brahman. The others, they want to go step by step, step by step, step by step. What happens is they get stuck in some of the steps and they stay there the rest of their life. Whereas if you go directly to Krishna, then you don't get stuck because you're dealing with the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, in today's verse 8.27, in the purport, the line Krishna is here advising Arjuna that he should not be disturbed by different paths the soul can take when leaving the material world. A devotee of Supreme Lord should not worry whether he will depart by arrangement or by accident.
Yes.
So generally, like I've seen, like even some neophyte devotees, they are also worry about leaving the body, and they pray like, I should not be taking any service from other devotees by the time like you're leaving the body, like not too sick, so that we are dependent on so many other devotees. So people pray like, okay, at the time of death, I should not be taking the service. So it sounds like it's like a material prayer, because we are not focusing on the service, we are focusing on how we are leaving the body. So is the right understanding for that kind of prayers?
You've heard that?
Yeah, people say.
In India?
Yes, I heard.
When they're dying, they don't want people serving them?
Yeah, I mean, they should not be too sick, like they are
They should not be sick.
They're sick in the sense like they're dependent on others and they're bothering others. Like they're severely sick and their family members are very much in.
So what are they going to do? They're going to go out into some field and hide in the bush and die, or what?
No, their prayer is like they are not dependent on anyone else, so they will just live like this, something like this. So
the concept is that if I become dependent on somebody, then I have runam, they call it. It means like I have taken a debt of service, and then now I have to come back to serve them. So that's the concept that so they don't want to be dependent on others, or at least they pray.
They're not bothering others because of their sickness, or they don't want to make a trouble for the family members. They don't want to be sick and die. Not because they are fearful of death, but they don't want to create trouble for the family members. Like they are like severely engaged in the service, something like that. So it's like just a material conception, the way of thinking.
Well, okay, so if we look at what we read, although the devotees know these two paths, O Arjuna, they are not bewildered. Therefore, be always fixed in devotion. So that's the truth. This other thing about, I don't want to be a burden on my family, blah, 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 that's not the real issue. The real issue is one should be fixed in devotion, especially at the moment of death. So Krishna is here advising Arjuna that he should not be disturbed by the different paths the soul can take when leaving the material world. A devotee of the Supreme Lord should not worry whether he will depart by arrangement or by accident. The devotee should be firmly established in Krishna consciousness and chant Hare Krishna. There you go. That's the truth. Whatever they're saying, that's their speculation. It sounds good, but it's not really that good. Again, it's based on the body. It's not based on relationship with Krishna. You see how easy it is for people to divert from the truth, and whatever they say seems to make a lot of sense, but actually it's not. So when it says here, a devotee of the Supreme Lord should not worry whether he will depart by arrangement or by accident, the devotee should be firmly established in Krishna consciousness and chant Hare Krishna. He should know that concern over either of these paths is troublesome. The best way to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness is to be always dovetailed in his service, and this will make one's path to the spiritual kingdom safe, certain, and direct. There it is. This is why I read this today. Have you ever seen this verse before? Yeah. Haribol. Oh, glory to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Haribol. Sometimes people say things that sound, oh, it's so right, it's so good that they say, but actually it's a deviation from what they should be thinking about. And then if people love that person, they should be chanting Hare Krishna and helping that person, have Tulsi, Patra, hearing Prabhupada, hearing the chanting, surrounded by the holy name all the time, and leave the body in that state. Not that, oh, I don't want to disturb anyone, blah, blah, blah. Haribol. So I had this treatment yesterday. It was very, very intense. Huh? Well, the treatment was painful, but yesterday I was able to walk. I felt good.
After the treatment? Before?
No, before the treatment. After the treatment,